Hey guys, hope you had a good trading day. It was a nice start to the week, especially waking up with CRON gapping up almost $2 a share. That was a nice little gift. I knew it was gapping up after hours, obviously Friday, and I had to kind of sit on my hands not to sell at 10.50, but ended up getting another buck 20 more this morning on the gap. So obviously that was a great way to start the week. And then, it really just came to sitting on hands and waiting for those ultimate A-plus type setups. And we definitely had a few. One of the things that typically, when I have a big gainer like the CRON swing from the last couple of days from the 6, 7, 8, 9s, sometimes you take that big gain and then all of a sudden you get a little bit sloppy or a little bit loose on the next trade. So I discussed, and last night on Scan, I said I figured IGC would probably go 1 to 2 range or so. And I think it's just really, so the 2 points here is, one is, the trade was good, nailed it, and everything, but I just didn't size up because I didn't want to get, too loose with my entries. I didn't want to I wanted to keep myself in check and make sure that I wasn't just being ultra aggressive and getting too comfortable in the trade without it kind of verifying that this is what it's gonna do. I had a perfect read. There's really no reason, if you short this stock today, obviously you really weren't paying attention to the price action. There was maybe one little short opportunity in there, and sure, you could short it off the morning parabolic or failed follow through momentum, but if you held it past right here, then it's clear that you just avoided or ignored the price action. And for those of you guys that have gone through Tandem Trader, textbook trading, and all that good stuff, we talk about absorbing and what soaking means. And so we have a lot of new members on the regular, so a lot of people were asking about that. What do you mean? What do you mean by absorbing? What do you mean by a sponge and soaking and all that kind of stuff? So the way that I explain it is that there's always the risk that at some point the bid's going to break. At some point, as much as they absorb, at some point it is possible that a bigger seller comes in and then ends up being a stuff move and it slams. So as with trading, as with anything, that's the risk. But this action over here was the equivalent to putting a big sponge underneath a water faucet and just sitting there, and there is a period of time where it can just absorb without spilling out all over the sink or anything like that. And so very similarly, it basically absorbed everything that came down. And you can't see how much it's going to hold. You can't see how much they're going to take in, because a lot of times when there is a situation like this, they hide their size. Iceberg order, hidden buy, whatever you want to call it. Display size. They might be showing 100 shares, 5,000 shares, 10,000, whatever it may be. But all of a sudden, 10s, 20s, 50,000 shares hit, and they just absorb everything in sight. So that's sort of what happened today. And like I said down here, it's a natural process for a stock that just has ran up from literally 30, 40, 50 cents to consolidate. It looked super, super heavy. It did. And it needed to do that in order to work traders out. And if it doesn't do that, everybody's going to have size. And then everybody would be banking, and that's just not how it works, because if everybody's got size and it goes straight up, then as soon as the stock turns, everybody's going to sell. And you've seen the difference between like an AWX or MTSL or SSLJ and maybe ALTC was another recent one, where it might be just one ATLC rather. It might just be one large buyer, and then as soon as they decide that they're going to sell, all the bids drop out, and they have to use that liquidity, and it just comes down. And that's the very similarly where, if if everybody's got huge size and it hasn't created a liquid market, it hasn't created a natural market, then when the first time that the bids are tested, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how far down they're going to, take it. You don't know where the support is. So there needs to be a process working out size. And it did a perfect job, I can tell you that, because I was in there and I sized in. I started to get in because this was on scan last night. I wanted to join it, join the trend, because I felt a lot of people were, one, underestimating it, but also two, not realizing the potential of what I compared it to this morning was, say, like a Bitcoin to an overstock. So say that was maybe the big one. And then the riots, RIOT. And then you had the other ones, DPW and MARA. DPW is probably the best example because it's a similar price range. But you had your TLRY types, which I'll just pull them up, but you have your TLRY, which pretty much took over leading this entire, sector. Then you've got your CGC, and then you've got your other one, well, Prone, but then you've got IGC. And IGC is the cheapest alternative to the pot sector. And people are just looking for a play. The difference that you have to understand with this type of volume, this type of action, is that it's real liquidity. It's not because XYZ newsletter went out and pumped the stock with 70,000 volume and it popped up, it went into 2 circuit halts, they added, and that's it for the day, right? That's not natural volume. That's not real volume. That is just 1,000 people doing the same thing and 1,000 people doing the reverse. And so that's not real liquidity, and you don't really know. And as you probably see, a lot of the times those will go up, come back, and a very small number of them come back. But when they do, usually they end up being nice little squeezers because likewise, where you don't know the liquidity on the sell side, you also don't know the liquidity on the, if you end up shorting and then you try to go to cover, you don't know if you're going to be able to rebuy all that stock. So the difference here is when you have stuff like TLRY and CRON and CGC, it's real volume. And it's real buyers, and these people are learning to just hold, buy and hold, and it starts to get spread out amongst, thousands and thousands and thousands of people. If this is the hottest sector right now, just like blockchain was, everybody wants to get a piece. Everybody gravitates towards it, and you and I look at it and we're like, oh my gosh, this thing was just 30 cents. There's no way I can buy up here. But that's not the same mentality that other people have, the people that are buying it. And what it comes down to is, how far do these shares get spread out? And instead of just having, like in the momentum low float world, instead of just having 1 or 2 parties with size and literally as soon as they buy it goes up, as soon as they sell it goes down, this is thousands and thousands and thousands of traders with real liquidity. And pretty sure they have a shelf and there's a great short thesis here, which is always even better. Obviously if it's effective and they can raise, next day, it gets a little dangerous to hold overnight. So you should always be aware of that. You should always be aware of the filings before you do hold something overnight. But what that does is it creates a great short thesis. This junk's moving. Obviously they're going to raise, blah, blah, blah. And there's no reason for it to be up. And then, that was that. And here we are at $1.80 after hours. So going back to, yes, there was a potential short and, failed follow through and pulled back. But if you stayed short after this and after VWAP reclaimed, then, you just got stubborn. And a lot of people get stubborn, obviously. And I have to, fight being stubborn every single day. Because it's just natural for us to kind of we don't try to, but we end up kind of going towards the stubborn side. And the best traders that I know are able to limit that. We all have it in us to either overhold something or do something that we know is not the right thing to do. But anyway, So it started to absorb. Getting back to the whole sponge conversation, it starts to absorb. So there's volume coming down, but the bid's not moving. So you start to see that process going around and around and around and around, where it kind of comes down and they absorb it, then it pops back up a little bit on air. The key is when they absorb, you want it to come back up on air. You don't want it to absorb, rebound a little bit, and then just get stuffed. And stuff is a term that we coined on Tandem Trader, and it refers to basically the opposite of the absorb move, or the absorption and sponge, things like that, soaking. Whereas the offer is not really showing size, but as all the volume goes into the offer, it just stays there. It doesn't move, and that's that. And that's usually negative, because if you think about everybody buying a breakout or covering, if all of a sudden it goes, there's a bunch of volume, all these people now have that, whatever that price point is as an average, and it doesn't budge, well, it's only a matter of time before they want to reverse the trade and get back on the bid side. So when all those people come out, typically after a stuff move, you get a big red candle. And so you can see there was none of that. Each time it pulled back, it kind of just rebounded, pulled back, rebounded, pulled back. There was no big volume stuff moves. All the big volume was actually on breakouts. And then after it started to ABCD off the VWAP, it never looked back and it never breached it again. So obviously at this point, this move was all probably intraday covers, very stubborn traders. But if you overheld through here, yeah, you just ignored the price action, and this was 100% saying, hey, this is trapping and absorbing, and it's going to go higher. But there's always that risk that it stuffs. So that is why shorts stay in there, because look, the stock was just 30 cents, and they can they need to raise money and all that good stuff. So at any rate, I'm going to post the chat logs, or I would suggest going back through the chat logs and just read the commentary and read the thought process that goes in through this, and understand the difference between real liquidity and your typical momentum newsletter pumps that come and go, and that's it, volume's gone, and it would have never traded as much volume as if they weren't involved. So that's really the thought process on this IGC. I think that it can continue to have some good action. Remember, though, like I said today, you need to have a game plan based off of TLRY, CGC, and CRON. If those things are in the gutter, obviously this trade is not going to work as well. But if it's holding like it was today versus the peers, for example, TLRY starts to come in hard, and so this thing got shorted. It started to pull back with it, but it ended up holding trend. It ended up holding on. So basically, if you watch TLRY, then you probably were getting short on IGC, and then you end up getting squeezed out. So I'm hoping for a weak open. I do have small overnight still. I sold most of it in the close, but I am hopeful that this does have a little bit of a weak open, maybe a trap again. TLRY has numbers tomorrow, so I'm thinking that might gap down a little bit and reaffirm to the shorts that, hey, we had the trade right, and then I think it might come screaming back. So I don't think we've seen the end of this pot stock rally. I think that there's a lot of shorts in a bad position, bad way right now. TLRY was up $10 alone today, closing. It was up, I think, almost 15. Let's see, it was 44 to 58. So it was almost up 15, 14 something. It's still slowly grinding back, but it's got numbers tomorrow. I think the fact that it's pretty much squeezed shorts, $20, $25 the last couple days. I mean, there's no short that's on the right side here. Maybe they might get broke even at 48 to 50 range, something like that, 47. But I just think that as long as it bases around the 48 to 50 level, I think that there can be some longevity here. So that was that with those trades today. Crone, obviously, I had overnight. With the swing trade, I took it off. I think we're going to still have a nice little trade here. CGC, I like the lean. After the morning kind of settled down, I like the stuff moves. And basically a risk-off VWAP that was kind of outlined in the room. The most important part and understanding with all of this is everybody is on the same side as you. So, in other words, when it washes out, you need to be one step ahead, because as soon as it starts to rebound and people realize that, then they're going to all do the same thing and cover. So you have to be one step. It's no different than when we talk about, all longs doing the same thing and then, selling before they all hit the bid. You just have to be one step ahead in this market and just be aware of that. Other than that, I got a very nice score on AMD late day. I took a couple paper cuts along the way. I never really sized into the trade until I actually got the very top. I was very happy about that. I sized into the 27.08 to 27.15 range, or thereabouts, somewhere around there. Basically into these couple candles here, right over here. And I washed out a little bit, came back, confirmed lower highs, and I didn't expect it to come all the way down. I mean, this was great. I ended up covering some right down here. I covered a little bit more, and then a little bit towards the close. But I said that this was going to be a monster trade, and you never know if it's going to be today, tomorrow, or what. But any time that a stock, first off, it traded 322 million shares. That's insane. Second off, it went $20 to $27 in a couple days. Now I realized TLRY did even crazier, but the amount of shares and the size of this move is insane. So the key is not to exhaust yourself on the front side. So that's why I was not scaling. I was dabbling in there. I was waiting for confirmation, and then it finally obviously came and it offered a great trade. But this entire thing was a big short squeeze, and it definitely may continue to trend up, and it very well could. But this type of action, where this many candles in a row, is typically not sustainable without some type of pullback. That doesn't mean it's bearish. The pullback, it's healthy. It's healthy for a pullback to happen. If it doesn't, then that's when you get these huge, big corrections that they kind of come out of nowhere and catch people off by surprise. Other than that, AWX had a nice little floater. It's up to 5 after hours. This is going to be an interesting one, especially if they get anywhere with the lawsuit. I always knew that was an option. I didn't really understand how the Form 3s were being filed, and the company wasn't going after the money. I had asked somebody that was a friend of mine that's very good with this stuff, and he was of the same thought. He wasn't sure. So I guess it just comes down to whether or not a lawyer goes after it, and in this case they did, because I was curious why GBR never did it too. Anyway, let me see if there's anything else to go over. TLRY had a nice little, I posted on Twitter, it had a nice little washout snag there at the close. I mean, there's not much to shout about. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else that's worthwhile for lesson type material. Nope, I think that's it. The only other two that were good standouts, TIS. I've had this as a swing. This was a big move for this stock. This is a $1+ today. So a newsletter did come in, and I have a rule. I got to basically slam the bid when they come in. So I did size down, but I did hold it overall. I'm hoping that they didn't bring in too many retail crowded people. The only other one, ENDP, they had some midday news. I thought it was actually negative, and a lot of people, other people did as well. But then it just launched. So that was great. This has been a swing trade. Again, it hasn't really amounted to too much. I mean, it's got kind of a top at 1630, 1650. So any launch through that is a sell of some, not all. I should have sold, obviously, in hindsight, I should have sold more. But, as suggested in the room, go ahead and lock some in for sure. But it's been a decent swing trade. But, again, each time it fails, I like it less. So it really needs to get away from the 1650s and keep on going. It's got a great chart. Originally, it reminded me of the MNK, move where it just kept on going. So that's what I was hoping to trade, but it's been kind of sideways. So anyway, that's it. The main thing I wanted to go over was IGC, understanding that one. It's got some great volume after hours. It could open up at 250, something crazy, but I'm really hoping that it doesn't because I want some good opportunities tomorrow and maybe trap some more shorts. So anyway, have a good night, guys. And if you have any questions, you know the drill. Reach out. We've got the lounge going throughout the day, which is where it's one-on-one with any questions, any guys in the room that you want to ask questions to, things like that. And then we did a broadcast pre-market this morning, 8:50 a.m. to about 9:10, and then we did a midday kind of recap around noon. So I enjoy doing them. I try to do them as often as I can. It just depends on how aggressive trading I am, or how aggressively I'm trading that day. So as long as I can do them, I will. If I'm pushing a lot of buttons or have size on something, obviously it'll be either before or after that, hopefully. So that's it. So have a good night, guys.